Hello, everybody. Today we are looking at types of economies. And we're basically looking at how do we produce the goods that we need? How do we distribute those goods? And what, what is produced? And these are big questions in an economy. And different economic systems have different ideas about how that should work. So we're going to look at these types of economies and how goods are produced. So here we go. An economic system is a method used by society to produce and distribute goods and services. And we're going to see a variety of different ideas here. So let's begin. All right. Whenever you're looking at economies, how you produce and use goods, you have to ask three questions. Number one, what should be produced? Number two, how should it be produced? And number three, for whom should it be produced? So the first economy we're going to look at is a traditional economy. This is probably your oldest economy, and it's something you see with more traditional societies. The Inuit of northern Canada, who have very small communities who rely on, the food that they can get from the water, from the sea, from the land, those kind of things. And so here's what we see for the traditional economy. Usually tradition, customs, and religious beliefs really govern economic decisions. You do what you do because that's what was done in the past, and things don't change very much. If your grandfather was a hunter, you're a hunter, and the next generation will probably be hunters too. Usually the economic activities are centered around the family, tribe, or ethnic group. And so you work together as a clan, as a family, as a tribe to get what you need. It is a joint effort. It's not individualistic like we see in the United States where, each individual family is working to get what they need. Usually it's the bigger tribe that's working together and sharing some of those goods. Resources are allocated based on inheritance. You get things depending on who your parents were and things like that. Farming, hunting, and gathering are done largely in the same fashion as the generation before. So you hunt and farm the same way your parents did for the most part. And that's not something we see in America. My parents farm much different than his parents did because of technology, but they're not going to have as big of a emphasis on technology. And your choices are really determined by the environment. You're going to fish if there's fish. You're going to hunt if there's animals to hunt. You're not going to, be a people that try to hunt if there's nothing that lives around you. So you have to take what the environment will give you. That's a traditional economy. And you don't have a whole lot of technology that you use. Old-fashioned methods work, so you continue with them. And usually as a child, you'll follow in the steps of your parents for your job. So yeah, this dude over here, who's like, hey, a traditional economy means less choices and a lower standard of living. He's kind of, putting his nose up at them because they don't have a lot of manufactured goods and they don't make a lot of money. But they may say, no, it means that, we have limited needs, we waste less of our resources, and we're using the earth wisely. So it's a different way to think about things, taking just what you need and really working together as a community to get it. That's what we traditionally see with a traditional economy. The next one is a command economy. And the difference here is, if you look at this chart on the bottom, which is going to be hitting for a second here, there it goes. What to produce, how to produce it, and for whom to produce it. This is determined by the government. And so all three of these questions are answered in this. The government decides. So the government or another central authority makes all the economic decisions. Individuals have very little influence over what is produced, how it's produced, and who it goes towards. The government will decide that. So they'll look at, all right, we have, this much wood. We're going to make this out of it, and we're going to ship it here. Individuals don't have that choice. Resources are owned by the government, and there's no competition. The purpose of business is to provide goods and services, not to make a profit. So if everything's owned by the government, including the businesses, the government might only have one lumber mill in an area. They may only have one type of store. There's not going to be a Lowe's and a Home Depot and a Menards because they're all competing with each other. They'll just have one big home improvement store. There's not going to be a Target and a Walmart. There's just going to be one store for your goods because that's run by the government. And why would the government make two companies to compete with each other? Factories are concerned with quotas. So a factory isn't worried about making a profit. They're just worried about, the government told us we need to make 1,000 teddy bears. We're going to make 1,000 teddy bears or 5,000 pairs of shoes, whatever it might be. And consumers have few, if any, choices in the marketplace. There's a story about a leader from the Soviet Union, which had a command economy, comes to America, to Texas, and he's standing in a grocery store in awe. And he's looking at all the different types of popsicles, which you don't think about. We have a ton of different types of popsicles. In a command economy, maybe they have one. So you don't have these options. There's no Nike, Adidas, and Reebok. There's maybe just Reebok, and everybody has the same type of shoes. So there's not a lot of choices. The reason's simple. Choices cost money. And if you can give everybody the same option, maybe there's less fighting, but it costs a lot less. And the government decides what the price of goods will be. In a normal economy that we know, with capitalism, the price is determined by how much supply there is and how much demand there is for that good. In this one, the government sets a price. So they could say shoes are $50. Whatever they say, that's what the price is. So this is called a centrally planned economy. And we don't see it a ton in our area in the United States because we have an open economy where businesses are in charge. But this would be one where the government is controlling everything. So here you go, characteristics of the command economy. The government makes a plan. So what is the plan for our economy? And think about how difficult that is. You need to decide in a year how many pairs of tennis shoes do you need, how many diapers, how many ounces of formula, how many cows are we going to milk, how many cows are we going to butcher. The government decides all those things, which is a lot. So 2, the government allocates all resources according to the central plan. So they take resources where they need to go. 3, the central plan sets the priorities for the production of goods and services. So the plan they make decides what they're going to make. 4, the government owns the businesses, so they tell the businesses what to do. And 5, the government creates laws, regulations, and directives to make sure the plan is followed. So they make the plan, they get the resources where they need to, they build what they think they need, and they enforce it. So that was the command economy. And often if we have a command economy, you see it more with a socialist government or a communist government. What we know in America with our capitalist government is called the market economy or capitalism. We don't have a pure capitalist economy, but we have a lot of elements in it. So in a capitalist economy, economic decisions are made by individuals or companies that are working to make a profit based on how much is available and how much people want. And so in this situation, you have businesses, and all these businesses want to make money. And so they're making goods and trying to convince you to buy them. Nike, Adidas, Reebok, all those companies, they're trying to convince you that their shoe is the best, and they're competing for your business. Resources are owned by individuals and businesses, so the government does not own the businesses or the land. And profit is the motive for increasing work. Nike is going to make more shoes if it makes more profit. If it's not making profit, it's not going to make shoes because there's no reason to do it anymore. Competition determines prices and increases the quality. When people, have a debate over, are you a Mac or an Apple kind of guy, or do you like a different kind of phone? Well, it's interesting because, if you're an Android fan or an Apple fan, it doesn't really matter because they're competing with each other and they're making each other better. Android will come up with something and Apple will try to make it better, and then Android will try to make it better. That's wonderful. In the end, you have better quality products. And individual freedom is very important. You have the freedom to make your decisions. You have the freedom to start a business. You have the freedom to buy what you want and to choose how much you want to buy. So whereas in the command economy, you're very limited in your options, a capitalist market economy, you have a ton of options. So if you have a pure market economy, it's called capitalism. If all these things happen and the government doesn't get involved. But that doesn't really happen often, if at all. Most of the time, the government does get involved. So you have private property, you have the right to choose what you want, competition between different companies, and a government that really limits what it does. Now, the reality is most of what you see in the world is a mixed economy. It has some elements that are command, it has some elements that are capitalist. That's what we have in America. So you take some of both and you make your economy out of it. In America, we have a mixed economy because businesses, for the most part, can do what they want. However, the government does have limits on what they can do. Okay, so a gun manufacturer has the right to make guns, but the government has determined that they can't sell machine guns to a normal person. That's a mixed economy. The government's telling you a little bit of what to do, but businesses mainly get to make their decisions. So the government guides and regulates production of goods and services. They don't decide what's produced, but they do regulate it. For example, a service, riding on an airplane. Airlines have the right to fly where they want for the most part, but they have to follow the government guidelines for what are the rules. You know, your pilot can't be drunk. You have to check the air pressure on the tires. You need to do safety checks so often. That's government regulation. Resources are usually still owned by the individuals, and the goal of the government is to protect both the people producing goods and the people buying the goods from unfair practices. So when you look at it, you see economies at different places. The United States is here. It's more capitalist, more free market, where we decide as individuals and businesses what we build. Whereas North Korea is more communist. The government is more in control of what's built and who gets it and all those kind of things. So everybody's kind of in the middle with a mixed economy. Some are more capitalist, some are more command economies. So who decides in terms of these three questions? Let's take a look at that. Okay. In a traditional economy, what will be produced? Well, whatever tradition, values, and rituals dictate. So whatever has been produced in the past, that's what will be produced now. Same answer for how it's produced. What have you done in the past? Well, you're going to do the same thing. If you fished, you're going to continue to fish for those goods. Who is it produced for? Well, what have you done in the past? Maybe in the past, when you fish, you always fish for the elders, the older people first, and then for the young mothers. There could be an order that you've done in the past and you continue to do. With all of this, it's all based on tradition and what you've done in the past, which is why it's called traditional economy. In terms of a command economy, what is being produced? Whatever the government decides it wants produced. How is it being produced? However the government wants it to be produced. For whom is it being produced? For whoever the government decides it's going to go to. So the government controls everything in terms of what you're making, how you're making it, and who gets it. And a market economy is completely different. What is produced? Whatever the consumer wants. We're the consumers, people buying the goods. How will it be produced? However the entrepreneurs decide. They'll decide based on demand. So, maybe they're making computers. Maybe they realize that if you produce it with a better quality lithium battery, more people buy it. So the business owners, the entrepreneurs, produce it in a way that's going to make them more money, or it's going to make it so they have more sales. And who's it produced for? Whoever's willing to afford it, whoever can afford it. So whereas with a command economy, the government decides all this. In this situation, it's all decided by business owners and consumers like you and I. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of this system? Well, here's what we have. The traditional economy, you don't have as much competition. There's less friction. People get along a little bit better. Everybody knows their role because it's the same as it's been for generations. And the system's pretty well understood. You've seen your parents in the system, so you know what you're going to do later on. It's not like your dad was a hunter and gatherer and you're going to, go on and become a CEO of Microsoft. That doesn't happen. You're going to be a hunter and gatherer too. The downside, it doesn't really allow for growth. You don't really see a whole lot of change because there's little technology being used and you don't want to change. Any changes you have are pretty slow, and there's not a whole lot of social mobility. Your role's kind of determined by your birth. You're not going to go up in society and make more money and be more profitable because that's not what you focus on. And the last one's a big one. Individuals have no control over the environment. So whereas if you work in the United States in a more capitalist society, you make money, you can buy food. If you're in a traditional economy and you rely on moose that usually cross, but there's no moose, well, you're out of luck. You're going to go hungry because you're not going to get what you need. In a command economy, the advantages, it serves the whole group. If the government's doing their job, they're going to make sure that everybody has enough food and supplies and goods. It should distribute wealth. There shouldn't be a wealthy class and a lower class because everybody's getting the same things. That's the goal of the system. The products produced fulfill needs. Hopefully, if the government's doing a good job, they know how much of something is needed, so they produce that much. The disadvantages. A lot of times the government's wrong. Their estimates on how much you need isn't right. So you might have, let's say you need 10,000 diapers. Well, the government may have only said you need 5,000. That's a bad situation. It's going to be a dirty situation. Or they may have said you need 20,000. Well, that's waste. So it's hard to adjust and make the right number. There's not a whole lot of incentives. You know, if I know that I'm going to get the same goods and the same money as somebody else, why work harder? Why take on a harder job? And so that becomes a major issue with the command economy and communism. It can infringe on personal freedoms. You don't have the right to create your own businesses. You don't have the right to personal property. You don't have the right to buy what you want. That's all decided for you by the government. And if you have corrupt leaders, they're going to take the money for themselves and you're going to be left with less. And we've seen this time and time again. The leaders in the Communist Party and some of these governments, they get the wealth and everybody else is kind of equally poor. So the market economy, capitalism, what we know largely in America, the good side. Prices are determined by the market. If something's hot and trending, the price goes up. If it's not as popular, the price goes down. Competition brings prices down because companies want to have you buy their goods. They lower prices, so you get a better price. That's good. You can buy whatever you like and whatever amount you like. The coronavirus, toilet paper, if it was available, you could have bought 10,000 rolls. Some people did, right? So you have those options. It adjusts pretty easily to change. When you saw the switch with coronavirus, we had a toilet paper shortage for a little while, but then production picked up and then we're back to normal again. And the government doesn't get involved too much. Businesses are mainly left alone. And there's a lot of things you can buy. This list keeps going. And the money goes where it is needed for the greatest return. If I have a computer company, but people are now buying more phones, I can switch production to phones. The downsides, not everyone gets what they need, and there's some poverty. This is a system where if the government's not involved with capitalism, there's no security net for those that are struggling. They're on their own. And we do see homelessness because of this. We do see poverty because of this. It can be hard for the government to provide services for the poor. If they're staying out of businesses, that's a little more difficult. Sometimes there's market failures. We see stock market crashes, like in the Great Depression, and they can hurt everybody. And people are allowed to make harmful choices. You can go out and buy something that's going to hurt you, and no one's going to stop you. And so you have that personal freedom, but that can in the end kind of harm you. So a mixed economy, having some command, government in control, having some businesses in control. What do you see there? The advantages, you have freedom to operate businesses while the government has the freedom to make rules to protect people. So that's kind of the best of both worlds, if both sides agree with each other. The disadvantage, you might not have the best use of resources, which is true. And sometimes government getting involved can hinder progress. So you're not as productive or innovative as you've been in the past. And sometimes you have tensions occurring. Sometimes people feel the government's getting too involved in their business and they don't have the freedom to act how they want to. So that can be an issue too. So that's what we're going to have for the first part of this. This will be video 1. And with video 2, we're going to look specifically more in detail at both capitalism, socialism, and communism. So we'll see you then. Take care.